Cheers was one of the most famous shows of all time. Its sharp humor and memorable characters made people laugh for more than 10 years. Behind the scenes, though, things were anything but easy, even though it looked easy on screen. On the set of the polished comedy, there was a lot of intense tension, feuds, and shocking power battles that went on for years. But Kelsey Grammer has finally talked about the show. The secret he told has become one of the most talked about in the history of sitcoms. Which well-known star made the Cheers set seem anything but friendly? The answer might change everything you thought you knew about the show. How Cheers got its start. In September 1982, NBC showed the first episode of a new comedy that looked and felt like nothing else on TV. The whole show was set in a Boston neighborhood bar called Cheers, where, as the popular theme song went, everyone knows your name. It was a pretty simple scene. It was a cozy bar with wooden walls that was always full of regulars and new, strange customers. But the people were what made Cheers truly unique. Sam Malone, a charming former baseball player turned bartender played by Ted Danson, was the show's main character. Sam was sure of himself, good, looking, and more interested in relationships than in being responsible. Diane Chambers, played by the famous Shelley Long, stood next to him. Diane was smart, had high ideals, and seemed better than everyone else. This made her clash with Sam's easygoing attitude. Their love-hate relationship quickly became the most important part of the first few seasons of the show. Their honest feelings and funny back and forth conversations made it more than just a normal sitcom, as Carla Tortelli, the sarcastic and jovial waitress who loved kids and insults, Rhea Perlman brought grit and snark to the show. Nicholas Clasanto played Sam's loyal, but not very smart co-bartender, Coach Ernie Pantuso. He brought a gentle, likable energy to the show that helped it stay grounded. Then there were the two most famous regulars at the bar. George Wendt as Norm Peterson, an accountant who was always out of work and loved beer, and John Ratzenberger as Cliff Clavin, a male worker who was the punchline of many jokes because of his useless knowledge and awkward delivery. But Cheers had a rough beginning, even though it had a great cast and smart writing. Nielsen rated it 77th out of 100 shows in its first season, which is not good at all. NBC did something rare and risky by keeping the show alive, betting on its quality and giving it a chance to find its audience. Most networks would have killed it right away. Word of mouth, more good reviews, and some important changes to the show's time spot helped it catch on over time. People loved how familiar the bar felt, how well the characters got along, and how the witty dialogue made it stand out from other comedies of the time. By the middle of the 1980s, Cheers was one of the most popular shows on TV. It quickly became one of NBC's biggest hits as its numbers kept going up. It was also a big deal during awards season. A crazy 117 Emmys were up for grabs during Cheers' 11 seasons, and the show won 28 of them, including 4 for Best Comedy Series. What began as a new show with low ratings became one of the most famous and important sitcoms in TV history. In 1984, during the 3rd season of the show, a new character was added by the writers that would change the whole tone of the show in a surprising way. That person was Dr. Frasier Crane, and Kelsey Grammer, a stage actor who wasn't well known at the time, played him. Frasier was added as a ploy for a short time. Diane and Sam's relationship was on one of its many breaks at the time, and the writers needed someone new to make things interesting. Frasier was a psychiatrist who had gone to Harvard and spoke in very long, complicated lines. He loved opera and psychology very much and thought he was the smartest person in the room. He was presented as Diane's new love interest, someone whose tastes and cultural interests were more in line with her own. Kelsey Grammer's role on the show wasn't supposed to last more than a few episodes at first, and there were no plans for her to be on it after that. But what came next shocked everyone. As soon as Grammer walked onto the screen, he stood out, not in a flashy way, but with a unique mix of dry humor, awkward confidence, and sudden vulnerability. People liked his character right away, even though they didn't like him at first. He was haughty, highly analytical, and proud, which could be annoying at times, but he was also funny, unique, and easy to remember. The show's creators saw that Frasier could be funny, especially when paired with characters like Sam and Carla, who weren't afraid to make fun of how he acted like he was better than other people. This led to some of the best and most quoted scenes on the show. Fassier went from being a minor character to a main character in Cheers over time. His stories got better as they went on. His relationships with the other people in the bar got more interesting, and the audience started to understand his worries, his fears, and his desperate need to be cared for. It was no longer just that he was dating Diane, he was now an official part of the Cheers family. The act by Kelsey Grammer was a big part of that change. In the 1980s, comedic figures didn't usually have as much depth as Fassier did. Even though he was rude and sarcastic, there was a man who really wanted to connect with others, be loved, and feel at home in a place that kept showing him how out of place he was. There were mixed views about adding more actors, even though Grammer's character was great behind the scenes. Some actors were said to be afraid that their characters would be pushed to the side. Kelsey Grammer made a character that was only going to be in a few shows into a TV star. It's tough to picture Cheers without Fassier Crane. But at first, almost no one saw it coming. It looked like everyone had fun on screen, and the bar always seemed like a friendly place, but things weren't always so easy behind the scenes. Under the surface, fame, artistic tensions, and personality clashes were beginning to show. As the light got brighter, the stress level rose. A lot of people who watched Cheers didn't notice the rain that was slowly building up outside the set. The problems that the group had to deal with. At first glance, working at Cheers seemed like a dream job. The actors got along so well with each other. Millions of people watched every week to feel like they were part of that Boston bar family. The stories were smart and funny. Things weren't nearly as fun behind the scenes, though. The stars of the show were under more and more pressure as its fame grew. Long days of shooting, being watched by a lot of people, and the sudden fame all took their toll on her. The actors worked hard to have perfect comedy timing on screen, but many were having a hard time behind closed doors. During the height of Cheers, Kelsey Grammer was going through the most personal chaos. Before Grammer joined the show in 1984, he had been through a lot of hard times emotionally. A few years before, in 1975, he had been through a terrible event that few people could ever fully heal from. The sad truth is that his sister Karen Grammer died when she was only 18. To make matters worse, Kelsey was only 20 years old at the time, and he was just starting out as an actor. He had to deal with the terrible loss. The death changed him for good. People who worked with him at Cheers knew he was still hurting, even though he rarely talked about it in public. It kept coming back to haunt him, and it was one of the mental cracks that grew bigger over time into something much worse. As the number of people who liked his role grew, so did his pay and fame. But behind the polished shows, he was fighting an alcohol and drug addiction that was getting worse. What started out as a little drinking quickly got out of hand, and his life outside of work quickly became unmanageable. Grammer later said that he used drugs and alcohol more to numb himself as he became more famous. He couldn't get away from the storm that was caused by the pressure to keep up his growing fame and his unresolved grief. He missed some practice nights. He came to set still some mornings to rest after the night before. The people who worked on the show did their best to keep things running easily, but people who knew him well could see the red flags. Then there was 1990, a year that would change everything. Grammer was arrested for driving while impaired and having a controlled drug while Cheers was getting ready for another big season. He was jailed for 30 days for what happened, and it quickly made the news. Fans and many people in the entertainment business were shocked. Not only did the event wake up Grammer, but it also woke up the whole Cheers team. But instead of making a big deal out of it, the producers and stars of the show sent a clear but quiet message. As a coworker and friend, they backed Grammer, but they thought things would change. Several cast members are said to have quietly gathered around him and shown compassion without giving him an easy way out. There were also serious talks about business and duty at the same time. There was never any public doubt about Grammer's future on the show, but the message was clear. He needed to take care of himself and make changes in his life right away. Grammer said in later comments that the Cheers team helped him feel normal again, if only for a little while. The road to healing would still take many years, though, and his problems didn't end with the court case. The cast of Cheers was hit with another major emotional blow While Kelsey Grammer dealt with monsters behind closed doors, it was one they couldn't keep secret this time. Nicholas Clasanto, who played the likable but sometimes forgetful coach, was a fan favorite from the start. People liked him on and off screen because he was friendly, funny, and kind in real life. Fans didn't know this, though. Calanto had been sick with heart disease for a long time. His health was getting worse quickly by the third season. Calanto kept going to work even though he was sick because he wanted to be there for the show and his coworkers. However, Nicholas Casanto died in early 1985, just before work began on a new show. He was 61 years old. It was terrible for the cast and team. He was like a father to many, especially the younger group members. The makers chose not to hire someone else to play the coach. They thought that no one else could bring the same energy to the show as Colasanto. Instead, they respectfully and quietly wrote him out, letting the bar feel his loss just like the cast did in real life. Later that season, a new character called Woody Boyd was added. At the time, no one knew who played him, but his name is Woody Harrelson. Woody was young, innocent, and from a small Indiana town, unlike Coach. It was different from hers, but it worked. Harrelson became a fan favorite right away, and getting along with the rest of the group made the change easier. Yet, for people who knew Calanto, the set never felt quite the same. In honor of him, the producers kept a picture of the Apache hero Geronimo. Calanto kept it in his dressing room to bring luck to the main set of Cheers. But that wasn't the end of the problems. The show went through yet another big change in 1987. There is now a new boss for the bar, played by Kirstie Alley. Her personality wasn't too intellectual or emotionally difficult. She was driven, worried about how others saw her, and very anxious. And this gave the show a whole new way to make people laugh. But Alley's addition gave the show new life and kept the numbers high. People were interested in her personal beliefs outside of the show, especially since she was very public about her membership in the Church of Scientology. Scientology wasn't looked at as closely by the public at the time as it would be later, but Alley's public support for the church made people look twice. Some news outlets started to wonder how her views might be affecting the show or the people she works with. The Cheers team was always professional with each other, and I never brought her views to work. Still, the subject got some interest from the media, especially as she became more well-known. Her personal life was also written about in tabloids, with stories about her public weight fights and high-profile relationships. Alley had personal problems while she was on the show, just like Grammer did. But her problems were less about addiction and more about her mental health and the heavy attention from the media. As the years went by, the cast of Cheers kept making one of the most beloved comedies in TV history. Happiness did not come free, though. At some point, the group wasn't just acting, they were also making it through. A lot of people laughed, and there were funny and heartfelt scenes in bars. But behind the scenes, each group member was on their own path. Some were heavy with pain, others with stress, and all with the weight of being a part of something much bigger than their own role. Even though the actors never stopped moving on screen, Cheers wasn't just about the people we saw every Thursday night. It was about a group of artists who each week deal with something heavy in their own way, but still manage to work together to make magic. The show kept going even though everything was going wrong. It wasn't always easy to get through the storms, and the connections weren't always as warm as they looked on TV. While everyone laughed and cheered, there was real tension between two cast members that almost broke the show. Kelsey Grammer and Shelley Long's early behavior don't get along. Shelley Long, who played Diane Chambers on Cheers, was a big part of the first few years of the show. The character of Diane was smart and funny, and she was often the inspiration behind the show's best moments. Behind the scenes, though, Shelley Long was known for being hard to work with. A lot of people who worked on the show have said bad things about how she behaved on set, which is awful. People have said that Shelley was bossy and picky about how her character and the show's scripts were treated. Both the writers and her co-stars have said that she made it a habit to question the plot often. She didn't agree with the lines or scenes as they were written. Instead, She wouldn't stop working on or writing scenes she didn't like. Not only did they do this once, but they did it a lot, which caused some stress during production. This is something that Ted Danson, who played Sam Malone, has talked about publicly. He agreed that Shell was talented, but he also said she could be nasty on set. Ted said that Shell had strong feelings about the story and her part, which sometimes made them disagree. Still, he admired her talent and dedication to making the show great. As he once put it, being in the room together was hard at times, but when we got to work, it was great. Another person who worked on the show with Shelley Long was Ken Levine, who talked about his time with her. Levine called her professional, but he did say she could be difficult at times. She was very interested in Diane's character and wanted to make sure the part was played in the best way possible, he said. Because she loved what she did so much, she sometimes pushed hard for changes to be made to the plots or the way scenes were acted out. This action hurt more than just the writers, which is a shame. For the cast and team, it made working conditions that were sometimes tense. They often had to deal with the stress of meeting Shell's needs while also trying to keep production going easily, which made the work less fun. A lot of people were moved by how Shelley Long played her part on the show. It was hard for the cast to work with someone who often didn't follow the lines and wanted to change scenes at the last minute. This caused extra stress and sometimes bad feelings between group members, especially when they had a lot of work to do. Her insistence on being in charge of where her character went sometimes got in the way of the show's natural flow. Diane was the main character and was in a lot of scenes, so her constant requests and choices slowed down the production. What made things worse was that any changes Shelley made to Diane's character would have an effect on other players' performances and stories, which made the job harder. It's no surprise that Kelsey Grammer felt this effect very deeply. When Kelsey Grammer joined Cheers in its third season as Dr. Frasier Crane, the character was only supposed to be there for a short time. But Frasier became famous very quickly, and his part on the show quickly grew into a regular one. Many people agreed that Shelley Long and Grammer got along great on set. Fans were shocked when Grammer wrote in his autobiography that Shelley Long didn't like how quickly the character Frasier became important. He said that Shelley wanted Frasier's role to be taken off the show. Grammer said that Long felt frightened by how much attention his character was getting, and she was afraid that he would take away from her role as the main character. It was even said by Grammer that Shelley actively pushed the directors to get rid of his character because of these worries. He then said that the producers might have chosen to give him a bigger part because of Shell's complaints. Grammer thought that one reason his character stayed on the show was to make Shelley mad and refuse to give in to her requests. But in the end, Ken Levine, who was very involved with Cheers the whole time, chose to react to Grammer's claims and clear things up. He denied that Shelley Long had ever tried to get Kelsey Grammer fired from the show. He also said that the choice to keep Frasier on the show was based only on Grammer's talent and the good reviews from viewers. He said that Grammer's performance as Frasier Crane was different from anything else on the show, and that his character brought a new kind of smart humor to the crowded bar. Levine did say, though, that Shelley Long could be a pain on set. She sometimes wouldn't give in. She would think about something over and over again, but it was never because she was angry. It was just that she was very strict about it at times. I have to say it was annoying and tiring, but Shelley has a good heart. He told her she was very professional even though she was strong, willed and loved her job. Levine didn't agree with the idea that Long actively fought against language or even tried to get rid of his job on the show. He instead said that the directors chose who would be cast based on what would be best for the show. Many fans and people who work in the entertainment business were shocked when Shelley Long decided to leave the show after 5 great seasons on Cheers. The show was already a hit, and it was getting even bigger thanks to good numbers and good reviews. And it wasn't often that the lead actress of a famous show would quit, especially when things looked good for the future. Shelley finally said that the main reason she left was to focus on a job in movies. She was interested in playing in movies and TV shows because she wanted to try new things and improve her acting skills in new ways. It was understandable that she wanted to become a movie star, but it was very hard for the cast and directors to keep the show going without one of its main characters. When Shell left, Diane Chambers' story on Cheers came to an end. Diane was at the center of many stories, especially the ones about her difficult relationship with Sam Malone, played by Ted Danson. The show needed new personalities and new energy without Diane to keep people interested. Because of this, the makers cast Kirstie Alley as Rebecca Howe. There was a big change in the show's tone when Rebecca came on because she was very different from Diane. Her attempts to run the bar created new problems and storylines. Some reports at the time said that Shelley Long's departure was bad, but others said it was friendly. Reports said there were problems behind the scenes, but official reports say she got along well with the cast and team when she left. She was still proud of the work she did on Cheers, and she was even said to still be friends with some of her old co-workers. Years later, when Shelley made guest appearances on Frasier, the hit spin-off starring Kelsey Grammer as Frasier Crane, this good link was clear. Fans were able to see her again in these guest parts, which showed that her leaving the main series did not mean a permanent goodbye. She was ready to play the same character again, which showed that she respected the show's history and the characters she helped bring to life. It reassured viewers that the relationships built during the show were still respected by the actors, even if there had been problems in the past. So Shelley Long's leaving was the end of one story, but it was also the start of some new and surprising changes behind the bar. Kelsey Grammer, who had become an important part of the show, found that dealing with his relationships with his co-stars was just as hard and sometimes more honest than the drama he saw on TV. How Kelsey Grammer is linked to her co-stars. On Cheers, Kelsey Grammer did more than just play the smart therapist doctor. Frasier Crane, because his ties with other cast members outside of work, shaped a lot of what he did on the show. Among these, his friendship with Kirstie Alley, who joined the show after Shelley Long quit, is the closest and most helpful. If you watched the show when Kirstie Alley started, you quickly learned that she and Grammer shared more than just a workplace. They also got along on a personal level. Grammer talked a lot about how nice it was that Kirstie was so lively and brave. He liked how honest and full of life she was. These traits made their friendship strong. Kirstie's appearance on set made the place of work feel more like a family. Grammer talked about how having her around made everyone happier, even when things were stressful behind the scenes. They respected and understood each other as friends, which helped both stars grow as people and as actors. During some hard times in Grammer's life, this bond became very important. Like a lot of actors, Grammer had problems in his personal life, like getting in trouble with the state. Kirstie's help was very important at that time. She stood by him in silence but with firmness, offering friendship without judging. Having them close by made him feel less alone when things were hardest in his life. Grammer said this about Kirstie when she died in 2022. "I loved Kirstie. She was always beautiful. She just had that thing about her. She was a wonderful person, and it came through in her." Grammer had a special friendship with Kirstie, and he also had good working relationships with other cast members. The cast of Cheers was big and varied, and each player brought their own style to the show. Even though they had these differences, Grammer was known for treating his coworkers with respect and being a professional. He knew how important it was to work together, especially on a show where group chemistry was so important. With Sam Malone actor Ted Danson, Grammer had a lot of important scenes and plots in common. Even though their characters had problems on screen, the actors always kept a professional and polite relationship. Grammer admired Danson's lead part and experience, and he often took confidence and ease in front of the camera from his co-stars. People loved George Wendt and John Ratzenberger, who played Norman Cliff, for their funny timing and laid-back personalities. Grammer liked how funny they were and how they made the show more fun. Even though he wasn't as close to these group members as he was to Kirstie Alley, they got along well at work and helped each other out. Rhea Perlman, who played Carla, on the other hand, was known for having a smart mind and a strong personality. Grammer also liked how professional and good at playing she was. Even though their characters' stories went in different directions, they respected each other while they worked together. Cheers co-stars Kelsey Grammer had a mix of friendship, professional respect, and sometimes quiet distance with each other. He knew how important it was to keep the workplace positive, especially on a long, running show with a close-knit crew. In spite of this, not all of his work relationships ended well, like the one he had with Shelley Long. Cheers wasn't just a show in the end, it was a pressure cooker of talent, egos, heartbreak, and bonds that came out of nowhere. Behind the laughs and praise were real people who were dealing with grief, fame, and their own demons while trying to make magic on screen. Some problems were never fully solved, but they added to the show's rich history, which is still known today. It doesn't matter what you think about the drama behind the scenes, that Boston Bar always had more going on than met the eye. What did you like most about the Cheers cast? Post your thoughts below. If you liked this in-depth look, don't forget to like, follow, and hit that bell so you don't miss another Hollywood secret.